Good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to welcome you to today's webinar titled A Long Road to Rohingya Repatriation, a Discussion. This session is convened to reflect on the core themes of an upcoming book publication co-edited by Dr. Mohammed Zaman, Professor Dr. Robert Anderson, and myself. The book brings together interdisciplinary insights, policy analysis, and grounded field research on the protracted crisis of the Rohingya people and the ongoing struggle for repatriation. As I dive into the topic itself, it's my privilege to do the treaty recognition as well. The Institute is based on the original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homelands of Métis Nation. We all are treaty people, and we are all tied together with the true spirit of truth and reconciliation. Dear audience, to begin, we must acknowledge that the crisis facing the Rohingya is not simply humanitarian. It is deeply rooted in history, identity, and geopolitics. The Rohingya Muslim ethnic minority in Myanmar Rakhine State have long been subjected to structural exclusion, statelessness, and targeted violence, culminating in the 2017 military crackdown that forced, within the span of 2 weeks, 750,000 of them fleeing Rakhine and taking shelter in Bangladesh, the neighboring country. According to the United Nations UNHCR continues to affirm that conditions in Myanmar are not yet conducive to the sustainable return of Rohingya refugees. These conditions include denial of citizenship, military impunity, discriminatory policies, and continued insecurity in Rakhine, issues that remain unresolved even after years of international pressure. Actually, in the month of August 25th, it would be the 8th year of Rohingyas' mass exodus, and they commemorate this day as their genocide day. Bangladesh, despite limited resources and one of the neighboring countries and its own complex internal challenges, opened its borders on humanitarian grounds and now hosts nearly 1.3 million Rohingyas in the camps of Cox's Bazar area. While Bangladesh has consistently advocated for voluntary, safe, and dignified repatriation, the absence of progress has led to growing frustration, with Dhaka recently warning that the situation is untenable in the long run, posing risks not only to national stability, but also to regional security. On the other side, ASEAN, which once touted itself as a regional forum for dialogue and peace, has largely failed to meaningfully address the Rohingya crisis. The principles of non-interference has hamstrung its ability to exert effective diplomatic pressure on Myanmar. Even the so-called five-point consensus on the Myanmar crisis has been widely criticized for its ineffectiveness and lack of implementation. As if these were not enough, we are now witnessing a new flashpoint in Southeast Asia, with tensions escalating between Thailand and Cambodia, reportedly over border disputes and the shifting regional alliances related to the Myanmar conflict. This looming confrontation adds another layer of complexity to an already fragile regional order and diverse attentions from the long-standing Rohingya issue. It is against this volatile backdrop of this region, our book, which was co-edited by three of us, confronts, redresses the remarkable lack of understanding and knowledge about Myanmar, particularly in the West, regarding the Rohingya crisis and genocide. It provides an ethno-historical overview discussing the cross-border dynamics, the genocide, the United Nations, and international responses. It focuses on the refugee camps, regional security, and repatriation issue. The book presents a broad and well-rounded view of the ongoing crisis, highlighting perspectives both from within and outside it. The audience, this volume and today's discussion aim to unpack these difficult but necessary ideas and issues that we have outlined. We'll begin with individual speakers speaking for a bit of time and covering the major aspects of the book. And we have two distinguished editors today with us. And first is in the line Dr. Muhammad Zaman. And Dr. Zaman has worked over 2 decades as a consultant with the United Nations and other regional organizations. And he is following up with the Rohingya crisis and the issues of repatriation again for over a decade now in that particular world. And also, Dr. Zaman is a contributing writer in national dailies in Bangladesh, and he has written extensively on the various dynamics of repatriation and the conflict itself. And we also have our possibly a known person from the last webinar, Professor Robert Anderson, who is a professor emeritus at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. And in the last webinar, he presented on the history of opium, which has already been viewed over 350 times. And with these two distinguished editors and speakers today, I would like to start the webinar. And the way I would like to moderate the session today is first, Dr. Zaman will speak about various aspects of the book, and then followed by Professor Anderson. And then I will be adding up my part of the book contribution, and then we'll open up for the discussion with our core member of the project. And I see Dr. Ernest Thiessen has kindly joined from Aberystwyth, BC. Thank you, Professor Dr. Ernest. And Felix is also our consultant from Myanmar, and I see him also joined. Thank you, Felix, for joining us. And very shortly, we're expecting David Newman to be with us, and we'll be having a full house in terms of Q&A session. So I think without further ado, let me bring Dr. Zaman to the discussion. Dr. Zaman, you can go ahead and speak about the book. And actually, it is with your leadership, the book is coming to light very, very soon. Thank you, Dr. Zaman. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you, Kausar, and thank you all for joining this discussion. And I will talk mostly on the background of the book that we did, and to what extent it does really erases issues with regard to the current conflict, and at the same time the fact that this is a very different kind of book, unlike others that have been published in recent years on the Rohingya crisis. As you know, the first wave of Rohingya migration to Bangladesh was in 1978, when some 250,000 Rohingyas crossed the border to Bangladesh. Now, many return, after repatriation agreement with Burma, but there are something like 20 to 25,000 Rohingyas are still in Chittagong, in Cox's Bazar, from the first wave of migration in 1978. They are still being, they're still being in the UNHCR camps in Cox's Bazar. However, the 1982, with the adoption of 1982 citizenship law, which revoked the Rohingya citizenship, triggered a much larger exodus to many countries around the region, really, gradually. And today, as far as we understand from various sources, less than 1/4 of the estimated 3 million Rohingya people live in Rakhine or Arakan state, of which, as Kausar already mentioned, 1.3 or some say 1.4 million people live in Cox's Bazar refugee camp, as you all know. The rest of the Rohingya diaspora living in Pakistan, India, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Malaysia, some very limited number in Canada and United States, and also some Scandinavian countries, very small numbers. So you can say that the Rohingya is a diaspora kind of community, and less than one quarter are now living inside Myanmar, and most of them are in the so-called concentration camp, as many say, which are under the secured and scrutiny of the Myanmar junta. Now, despite this long-running Rohingya crisis of the Rohingya in colonial and post-colonial Burma, the genocide leading to the mass exodus in 2017 brought the crisis to the international arena. Prior to that, not very many people really talked about Rohingyas, and it was not flagged as a human right issue, although it was going on for a very long time within Myanmar state. Now, since the 2017, exodus to Bangladesh, you know that we are already now in. It has been now about 8 years. In September, August, September, it will be 8 years. There is the hope of immediate repatriation, and increasingly it is becoming a very complex issue, mired in regional and global geopolitics as we experience it. Now, as editor of the book, you know, the title of the book that you can see on the screen is Rohingya Stories, History and Geopolitics in a Multipolar World, which is in press and will be available soon, perhaps in September this year. As editor, we believe that there is a remarkable lack of understanding and knowledge about the Rohingya crisis in the West. And this has also already been noted by Kausar. On the background of the crisis and also the genocide committed by the military junta in 2017. Many contemporary popular writings focus more on the ongoing crisis, humanitarian aid, assistance, repatriation issues to their homeland in Rakhine State. Now, while these are very legitimate issues and concerns, there is no systematic studies or accounts of Arakan or Rakhine State, its past, to assist the researcher in understanding the history of the Rohingya crisis, the people, and their stories. As editors, we have been working independently, all three of us, on the Rohingya crisis for past several years, really. But we had the first opportunity to meet and share our ideas for a book on the Rohingya crisis during the 2019 Canadian Congress of the Humanities and Social Sciences held at the University of British Columbia. That was in 2019. I organized a roundtable on Rohingya refugee crisis at the Congress, which had participation, among others, by Robert Anderson and Kausar. And following that, we decided to work on the book project. Now, since 2017, I have published close to 50 different pieces, opinion pieces on the ongoing crisis of the Rohingya in Daily Star, which is the leading daily newspapers in Bangladesh, and also in other newspapers. And some of those articles were also reprinted in the regional daily papers in the region, in Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and other countries. Uh, we believe that the tragedies of the Rohingya people uh, uh, face, their stories, their struggles, deserve full-fledged holistic reporting beyond being victims, which is what has been discussed in many books. Their human face, their history, the rich culture and heritage of the people. And we believe that this has been missing in many of the recent analysis or understanding of the crisis. So our edited book, confronts those knowledge gap and lack of understanding, and describe the necessary background to the Rohingya crisis and the genocide. It is I'm an anthropologist, and I believe in an ethno-historical overview to understand any culture. So it provides an ethno-historical overview. It discusses the cross-border, dynamics, which has been there for a very long time. This is not yesterday, or this is not in 2017. People have migrated across the borders during pre-colonial, colonial period. We focused very much on this particular aspect to understand the nature and reasons for migration. We also look at the genocide, the extent, the UN and international responses, and including Canadian responses, which has declined significantly since the Bob Ray's, very useful flagging of the issues at the early on. Now, the book also focuses on the refugee camps. It talks about regional security, politics, geopolitics also, and the conflicting interest of the various regional powers such as China, India, Japan, and to some extent Singapore, not to speak of the lack of interest of the Asian communities or Asian that already mentioned by Kausar. So in our book, just to give an idea, we have Rohingya poets, we have historians, we have political activists, scholars, refugee advocates reporting from inside Myanmar. And many of the contemporary books don't have that access. Somehow we had the access primarily through Bob Anderson, one of the co-editors, and also Kausar Ahmed. And the book represents a broad and well-rounded view of the ongoing crisis. And despite the security risks, these people from Myanmar participated, in the book project. And it so happened that we are unable to contact them even for review and to see the book manuscript when it was ready, because they were moving from place to place. It was very difficult to trace them sometime. But nonetheless, they did join us because they thought it would be it is an essential task for them as an activist. So we are highlighting the perspective not from outside only. It is a perspective from within, how they see and how they view the issues with regard to even contemporary current armed conflict between groups and within groups. In fact, there are a lot of issues within the AAA or Arakan army itself. So these many of the chapters in the book discusses that both from a security point of view and criminality of some of the groups within the camp. Now, it is, in my view, is a very deeply moving story that we have presented in the book called Rohingya Stories. With very poetic, sometimes very literary nature of the text. And as you will see, the book starts with a very emotionally driven poem by one of the young Rohingya poet. And that drives the whole story, right from the very beginning to the end. The pain, the agony, the frustration, the lack of statelessness, and also the very fact that nobody listens really. It has been long 10 years for them. And there has been declining interest rather than any increasing interest about the resolution of the Rohingya crisis. So the discussion and discourses presented in the book highlights the frustration, highlights the emotion, highlights the statelessness, highlights the agony of the people, and the longing to go back to their homeland. This is very much, excuse me, presented in various chapters of the book. So also the book has a very global team of interdisciplinary scholars and experts from many different countries who have done original research in Burma or Myanmar over the last 20, 30 years to understand the Burmese politics, dynamics, ethnic conflict. This, Rohingya is not the only crisis in in Myanmar. There are many ethnic groups that have been fighting against the Burmese military for the last 50 years. In fact, I don't think Burma has ever settled as a nation, resolving the various crises and conflicts that they have inside the country. So the book has drawn on the scholarship of various historians, anthropologists, like Bob Anderson has been going back for the last many years, bringing together a very integrated, holistic analysis to understand the roots of the ongoing crisis, the survival and protection of the Rohingya refugees. I want to take this opportunity to thank my co-editors and the authors, contributors to the book, Rohingya Stories. Finally, we have dedicated, I want to mention to my audience here, this book to the Rohingya people, wishing their repatriation to Myanmar, their homes, their hearth, where they belong, with dignity and rights, and their dreams fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaman. I think we have very comprehensively covered what is in the in the cover and in between the covers of the book, and this is coming up very quickly, as I know, within a month or so. And folks, please keep an eye and in our social media platforms, and you will definitely see the launch itself. Having said so, now let's invite Professor Anderson, who is patiently waiting in the wings, and we also call him Bob. So, Bob, floor is yours. Go ahead, sir.
Evening, everyone, and thank you, Kauser, for inviting me to the center again. I'm very pleased to find this circle of interested and knowledgeable people. And I am the person who tonight will mention some of the chapters that are historically relevant. I will show you in a minute the map that, okay, there it is. This is useful because I'm going to talk about what we think, the historians think, are the origins of the Rohingya predicament, we'll call it. The Rakhine state, which was called Arakan, enjoyed a certain autonomy from Mughal Bengal and from the Burma kings in the 18th century. And it was relatively prosperous, quite small population, quite a fairly efficient rice cultivation system, but a very effective trading community, very marine, very sea-oriented, and somewhat protected. If I can move my cursor along this dark line is the state boundary. It also happens to be fairly high hills with thick forests, elephants, tigers, etc. in the 18th century, as until recently there were, of course. And yet the power of the Mughals and the power of these visiting empire builders, the Dutch, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, and the British, and then the French, alerted the kings in Mandalay to their vulnerability. And they decided, King Bodapaya decided in 1784 that he should annex Rakhine State, which was called Arakan. That annexation was the same, it was repeated 40 years later by the British power, the East India Company, to annex Arakan for its own purposes. So the Burma King state had a big army. It was, and the Rakhine state, the Arakan kingdom, was composed of small principalities. For example, the prince of Ramri, the prince of Thandwe. There were competing princes around Akyab, which is now called Sitwe. And there is the Mrok-U, which is the original capital, which, as you can see, is not on the coast. It's inland for protective reasons. And the Burma army imposed, and the king, of course, imposed Burmese administration, Burmese taxation, and gradually the Burmese language, so that the Arakan people were bilingual. They necessarily had to be engaged with the Burmese administrative world and the palace and the taxation and the military people, but they had their own flourishing linguistic and literary traditions. Then, for about 20, well, not quite 20, maybe to 12 to 14 years, the dissatisfaction among the princes, or some of the princes, let's put it that way, grew so strong that they began to push back on the presence of the Burmese army. This is 1796 or 1797. And I'm relying here on the work I did in the British Library a few years ago, a special document there. But more, I'm relying on our distinguished colleague, Jacques Leder, who is a French historian and extremely knowledgeable about this period. And his chapter is the foundational chapter in the book. And I owe a lot to Jacques for this. The resentment of the princes led, of course, there were factions, and there would be strong factions, some arguing, oh no, we have to accommodate to the Burmese king, he's so powerful, he's stolen our Buddha image, he's taken many things from us. And others were saying, no, we have to organize a resistance. So they came to Teknaf, a town that everybody knows. I first went to Teknaf in 1974, so I realized that this is an important place, but I had nothing to read historically. Unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say. So I was in Arakan State in 72 and 73, and I came to Teknaf in 74, and that's where I met Rohingya men, young men, coming across the river to get jobs to work in the Gulf states. It was the OPEC crisis, and the Gulf, the contracts in the Gulf states were very attractive to these poor people. So in the tension inside Arakan led to some people deciding that they had to leave. They had to come to Teknaf and cross the frontier, cross the Naf River. This is in 1799. And by mid-1799, there were 10,000 Arakan refugees. And a man called Hiram Cox was designated by the East India Company in Kolkata to set up a camp for them and to solve the troublesome visitors, we'll call them. They used various words like refugees or migrants and travelers. They didn't quite know how long these people would stay. Then Cox went north looking for a place where there was water, not very good soil, but water. And he found Cox's Bazar. And he didn't know it was Cox's Bazar, of course. He founded it, and the company paid for some of the settlement costs. They gave food supply to the refugees, and he was known as the Commissioner for Refugees at Cox's Bazar, 1800. So in the 21st century, since most of my conversation about this subject is that people think that this is some kind of recent problem with the nasty Burmese state of Myanmar. It has many sides, and the state is no doubt nasty, and so is its army. But this goes back 225 years. And the strange way in which Arakan people come to Bengal, come to Chittagong. They didn't stay much in Cox's Bazar unless they had to. But they came back and forth, and they used this frontier effectively and skillfully. And of course, they were drawn back. The poor ones were drawn back to Arakan because that's where the money was. It was a resource-rich and labor-poor economy in northern Arakan. And so gradually that population settled down, cultivated rice. Burma became the #1 exporter of rice in the world by the 1940s. The Japanese bought 400,000 tons from Burma, from this part of Burma, actually, just before they invaded Southeast Asia. So it's long been known as a rice basket, and the jute mills of East Bengal and the factories of West Bengal were dependent on rice from Burma. So it's a very long story, which I must end now. But we have chapters in the book on the origins of this predicament, that these people were, in fact, invaded and occupied, and some of them felt marginalized. And the elites, of course, lost their prestige, they lost their status, and they lost the high, and in some cases, they lost considerable income. And they were once wealthy. So coming to Teknaf and coming to Cox's Bazar was a temporary, in their view, temporary solution to a problem that they could never fix in Arakan. And in fact, they tried to stage re-invasions. 2 princes, particularly, we discuss it in the book. 2 princes organized, got the capital together, and did piracy, because they were very skilled mariners. So they did piracy in Bengal to take money to assemble the capital for this re-invasion. Didn't work. It worked. It didn't succeed. So indeed, Burma, the king of Burma, until the British conquered Burma in 1885, controlled Arakan. And then, of course, ultimately, the British had control of the Arakan economy. And so we are, if you look at this map just once again, if I could show you, in my chapter, I have all the correspondence between the magistrate at Chittagong, which is here, and the people who are the soldiers at Teknaf, and then correspondence from the what is called the vizier, the prime minister of Arakan, explaining why are these people coming, explaining their behavior, uh, explaining they should be sent back to us. They are essential to our, they don't say economy, they are essential to us. And so it's a strange and very gradual but not reciprocal exchange of population, which now, as Dr. Zaman just said, does not look like it will be reciprocated. It looks as though some Rohingya will remain in Rakhine State, but most will not under present circumstances. And that is the historic predicament that the Rohingya find themselves in. As he just said, they are now in Australia and they're dispersed all over the world. Thank you, Koza. That's slightly more than 10 minutes. I'm sorry. But
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted you to see the map, by the way, in the book has all the old names which are mentioned in the 18th century literature. So we can map out where these people came from.
Thank you, Bob. No, absolutely. It's all right if you have even taken a couple of minutes more than we planned. But I think it is important to understand the historical backdrop, as Professor Anderson rightly mentioned, that there is a long backstory to the crisis. And this is what we attempted in this book to educate our audience about these backstories. Now I shall very briefly say a few words about my chapter that I contributed, and I mostly covered on the security aspect of the situation and how it is jeopardizing the regional stability. And just yesterday, I do follow the regular update from various sources, and one is Substack. And there's an article written, it's called Battle for Myanmar's Critical Gas Pipelines. And as you all know, that since 2021, the military takeover of the state of Myanmar, People's Defense Force, which is a kind of ragtag organization of people, general people joining the armed resistance against the junta, and supported by the more than 20 ethnic armed organizations, that is ongoing. But this particular news that I'm sharing with you is very interesting. And if you have access to Substack, I would recommend you can have a read. And the whole article actually says that 3 gas pipelines crossing the Myanmar-Thailand border near the recently captured border point by the ethnic armed groups and PDF is called Thi. This is how possibly it is announced. But it carries 14% of Thailand's total gas supply from offshore Andaman sea fields, powering 8% of Thailand's electricity and serving as a major revenue sources for Myanmar junta. And now Karen, Mon, and Bama resistance forces, i.e. the PDF, are closing in on the regime soldiers guarding them. And if the current National Union seizes control of this pipeline that enters Thailand network, it will mark another step towards Bangkok's treating them as a serious political player. So what is happening actually in the bordering area of the Rakhine state and previously known as Arakan is a very rapidly evolving security situation. In the Western Front, where Arakan army has taken over control of 15 townships out of 17 in Rakhine state, and temporarily there is a ceasefire going on brokered by China, and which obviously we understand China is worried about their investment in the deep sea port and their pipeline and train line to Kunming. So there is a temporary ceasefire going on in that area. But in the north and northeast, this evolving armed conflict is really ongoing. And as you know, in my initial remarks, I did draw your attention to the recent flare-up in the Thai-Cambodian border over the past 72 hours. So it is really complex, and within this complex milieu, how this repatriation looks like is something we, as an editors of this book, we have a very difficult situation to answer, actually, and even forecast. Because as you also know, the audience, that this webinar is a part of Global Affairs Canada's funded project called Charting a Lasting Peace in Myanmar. And in this whole project, what we are trying to say is that we have to look and go back to the root causes of the conflict, which is actually the instability of the state of Myanmar. And if this is not resolved, any kind of repatriation, whether it is Rohingyas from Bangladesh or a whole group of mixed people, Karen, Chin, and Karini, others now living in Thai border, it will be impossible to even plan any kind of repatriation. And over and above, in our project, we are talking about Marshall Plan and others, because we believe that unless the stability is achieved and infrastructure for repatriation is created, then even repatriation doesn't make any sense. And of course, Rohingyas in the camps, as Dr. Zaman mentioned in the beginning in his remarks, they all want to go back. And if you read the poems that we have cited in our book, you will see the longing, the craving of a human being to go back to the place of birth is very obvious. But the geopolitics and the other aspects of factors are really prohibiting the repatriation idea of Rohingyas to Rakhine. So I'll stop here at this point in time, and I think we have a full house today, and I would request our founding advisor, David Newman, Dr. Ernest Thiessen, and we also have a guest today, Mr. Mohammed Murshid. Thank you, Mr. Murshid, for joining. And we'll open up the Q&A, and anybody can jump in, and we three will be doing our best to respond to your questions. So let's begin the Q&A session. Floor is open. Anyone can jump in.
I'd just like to begin, sorry to come late. I was at my grandson's baseball city championship playoff game, which they won. So I'm a happy visitor here tonight. I am always curious, given this is a Global Affairs funded project, but also because I'm very interested in how our own history in Canada can in any way contribute to us having a better understanding of the long history of other countries, and of course Myanmar and the Rohingya peoples are of particular interest to, I think, Canada because of our history with Indigenous peoples. Peoples that, of course, which are very negatively affected by arrogant and ignorant colonizers. Again, a part of the history in the Rakhine State and Burma. I just wonder, especially Bob Anderson and Mohammed, with as historian and anthropologist, are there things that can effectively be extracted from our own history that can be relevant to really sharing how we have evolved with the still displaced and marginalized and discriminated against and a genocide perpetrated against. Anything that you think of as historians that might be relevant and helpful for contributing to stability there in the ways that we achieve stability in Canada and now are, of course, at a stage where we have an abundance of increasing numbers who are appreciative of the benefits of healing and reconciliation and working together, and even adopting the basic values as a bedrock for the future of Canada, and some of us believe the future of the world. So I appreciate comments from both of you in that respect.
Bob, you
Zaman, John?
go ahead.
No, Zaman, please. I offer this tricky question to you.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting point you made,
Yeah.
Human. Now, what can Burma learn from the experience Canadian had in peace building and the building a democratic nations? It has been a long history in Myanmar, ethnic conflicts, and the conflict are because they want the entire state of Burma to be Burmars, and the lack of any attention to any diversity, multicultures. Burma is not one single country. It has many different nations. So it is important that the Burmese elite, I'm not talking about the military, the political elite, the military, has been ruling Burma for a very long time. The military elite should understand how they can bring together the various conflicting cultural groups into the fabric of a nation state. And the only way we use in Canada the whole concept of multiculturalism, believing that every single ethnic nationalities have a right, and sharing of the rights and sharing of the benefits, sharing of the democratic rights and processes, like lack of citizenship in this particular case for the Rohingyas is definitely a big bar, and there has to be some way, they won't, the Burmese military or the state would not do it. There should be some international effort really to deal with this crisis, taking examples from China, from Canada, and also there are other examples that Kausar has mentioned in the chapter, in building peace and reconciliation among the communities, and a renewed start. It's a very big question, but I know you have made a very legitimate question how to bring them together in the future. And I will leave at that point, and I'll ask Bob to supplement if he has any comment from historical point of view.
Thank you, Zaman. I invite David Newman to think of those treaties which are now being revisited in Manitoba, which were asymmetrical in their origin, but which are now being, what's the word? Through the resilience of the Indigenous people, they are being revisited and revived and reviewed. In my space, I would point to the Haida Agreement, that was just signed. It is the most advanced case, I think, in Canadian law in which the Crown negotiated common rights to the resources and specific rights to specific spaces for Indigenous people, the Haida. But on the linguistic, on many levels, the state of Canada yielded authority to the Haida Council. And if we studied that, and if we could gather the Burmese elite together in the room including the General Min Aung Hlaing and other senior generals, and showed them that this is not the end of their safety, not the end of their prosperity. It is the beginning of a different kind of evolution, socio-economic evolution in a specific space, no doubt, a specific space, the islands, to show them enough cases like that, that although it's not, we don't have the final word on the success of these negotiations and this agreement. It's not a treaty, but it's an agreement. We don't have the final word. We have to wait 50 or 100 years and we'll all be gone. But it would allow them to see the evolutionary starting point of what they need to apply in Arakan and in Kachin and in the Chin Hills. And I've become a historian of Myanmar, so of these conflicts. And they were getting, I wouldn't say halfway, but they were getting some distance under Aung San Suu Kyi and under her government. And in the previous Dr. Thein Sein, in those 9 years, there was some definite evolution towards that kind of solution. Not close, but at least the movement in the right direction. And on the February 1st, 2021, that was stopped.
I find that very helpful, and I just share that beyond the Haida Gwaii, which I agree your assessment of that. Of course, in the Yukon, Northwest Territories,
Yes.
Niska Nation, but Nunavut. I was on the Nunavut Planning Commission for 3 years, 2006, 2009, and was witness to, of course, the emergence of their own government, which I might say is a government that is not have political parties. And they sit
Yes.
in a circular legislature and they work
Yes,
at
that's
achieving
right.
consensus, right? So I think that in Canada, we have multiple, I would say, evolved models of what is becoming more and more a number of indigenous nations being part of course, what was originally a two-nation country,
Yeah.
and now it is becoming a multi-nation country.
Right.
So I really look forward to this, I think, being offered by our indigenous people and the people that are historians and anthropologists as something that maybe can provide hope for those people that have not yet had the advantage of empowered freedom and capacities to be able to accomplish what the Indigenous people are now accomplishing in Canada, thanks to our Supreme Court, thanks to our 1982 Constitution. But that's another example. I mean, it is how we evolved with that Constitution, Section 35, all of the rights that now Indigenous peoples have. And it's led to so much what has taken place since 1982. So in any event, thanks very much for dealing with this. I yield now to others.
Yeah, you can go ahead if others have any questions. Yes, Mr. Murshad, go ahead. And I would also request you to kindly and briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm not by no means that I have expertise in this area. I'm a totally different field. I'm a microbiologist by profession, but I do read Dr. Jaman's editorial on all Rohingyas and looking forward to read the books. But I have a kind of generalized question. In Canada, that government, either from Democrat or conservative or Republic or like liberals, none of them really preach the religion as their weapon. But unfortunately, in Southeast Asia, like Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, um, Burma, Myanmar, and all other Pakistan, you name it, either by religion, or if religion fell, then sectarian. If sectarian fell, then their caste and all sorts of. They try to use that, especially the political leader. They try to use that as a weapon for themselves. So I don't know that what can be done in that front, because to me that is the root cause. Unless we go beyond that thing, because it is political leaders who is actually making the life hell, because they wanted to be on the power. So either you are, I'm Muslim, so support me. They are Hindu, kill them. Or they are Shia, I'm Sunni, so kill them. So this is the attitude in this whole Southeast Asia region. So how do you think? I'm looking forward to all three of you. That uh, are you? I don't know what will be in the book, but do you think that can be included in the discussion, and somehow that need to be addressed? Otherwise, it will remain as it is in the Middle East. What is happening, in Palestinian and Israel. So it is all kind of, it's kind of fake thing, but politician used it very, very wisely and effectively.
Sir, maybe you should lead the discussion.
Thank you. No, but Dr. Zaman, I'll need some help too.
Okay.
In Mr. Murshid, your question is poignant at various levels, but my take would be that religion can be a divisive force, which is often what we see in the forefront. But religion slash faith, I'm just using both these terms but simultaneously, can also be a unifying force. However, the point you are making is true. In many of these countries of that part of the world, religion is used by political leaders as a tool of persecuting others. So it is a tool that the system adopts to justify violence, to justify oppression. So one way, yes, if you really think that how faith and religion can be a problem in terms of long and sustainable peace, and you look at Western model of secularism and how various rights of the peoples are secured through the Constitution, as we have heard from David's comments. So that this is one of the ways you can stave off from religion, interfering into the state affairs. But if you even go back to the Reformation, this was the main idea to, separate religion from the state affairs in Europe. But I agree with you that in those part of the world, possibly more things to be done in terms of creating institutions and systems which will prohibit use of religion as a political tool of oppression. Long way to go. It's a long way to go, and I don't know. We are talking about this issue in 2025, and the Reformation happened in Europe in 16th century. So I don't know whether we have progressed much on this point, and I would only conclude by saying that. I do tend to believe one of my part of my doctoral research was talking to faith-based organization in Winnipeg. I spoke to during my research. I spoke with around 38 faith leaders, those who lead their own communities in the city. And I did ask, like you, that how we can develop a system where faith is not used for political purposes. So I leave it here, but my position is faith also can be a uniting force. Thank
No,
you.
I totally agree. But I think what I wanted to say, maybe I didn't I was not able to convey my message that actually what I'm saying, there is political leader who is abusing the religion. Religion is good. I myself is a believer of a religion. I'm a Muslim and I practice. So I have no problem with religion. But when I see that, like if you see India, if you see Pakistan, if you see any country, even Bangladesh, so they kind of use this as a tool to divide and then conquer.
Agreed.
I will very quickly join Dr. Murshid. Uh, he has been a very good commentator on many of my comments or op-eds, and also connect with David Newman's what he said about how to resolve it. Now, in case of Myanmar, it is the religion which is being used.
Mhm.
They are being discriminated because they're Muslims. They want them to be Bamar, you know. And historically, these people have been Muslim. You cannot Muslims, and they have been arguing or uh, pol- organizing themselves for an autonomous region within Burma, okay, based on their faith and the history, which the government didn't want to agree on. And that has really led to this crisis and the war that you can see. So, any solution to this problem would be an autonomous, if not independent, Rakhine state in the north, and following what Mr. Newman said, this autonomous, independent recognition of the ethnic communities in a multicultural, multi-faith system is perhaps the way forward, and that is what we can say at this point. And thank you very much for raising this question, Dr. Murshid.
Thank you.
Bob, do you have any response? Oh, Dr. Ernest, yeah, go ahead.
So on this topic, of religion, if we think about repatriating the Rohingya back to their homelands, how big a factor is religion in that repatriation? That's the first part of my question. And the second part of my question is, I think there's about 1 million Rohingya in Bangladesh.
Mhm.
And they've been away from their homeland for over half a dozen years.
Mhm.
So what's happened to the places where they used to live, and how, if there was ever an agreement to bring them back there, those places don't exist the same way they used to. It's going to be a fairly complex operation to repatriate those people to a land where somebody else is living now. So where do you, I had the two-part question there.
I could
Okay,
comment
sure,
on that. Some of the villages that they came from have been burned to the ground, and the schools with them, and the masjids with the schools, but not all. So you have a very mixed picture of former neighbors among whom these people would walk, so to speak, who would resettle, and they would hold confidence in some, they would hold old friendships with some, and they would hold mistrust with others. And they would be sorting this out gradually, possibly with conflict, but it may succeed in the long run. I say this because I worked for the Quakers in Bangladesh in 1972, 73, 74, 75, and I assisted the refugee resettlement of Hindus in a group of in a subdivision called Madaripur. And when I saw the house by house settlements, the Hindu houses and the Muslim houses, which are all, of course, in a pattern. an occupational and access to the water, access to the canal. The patterns are intelligible when you understand the culture locally. They had people who were their neighbors who kept their furniture for them, kept their goats for them. Even people who didn't know if they were really coming back, but they kept this stuff. Others had taken everything and sold it off. They were also very poor. This was an area of relatively hand to mouth poor people. And yet you could see gradually the fabric of that society, the Hindu-Muslim coexistence, being reconstructed. So that I went 5 years ago, and it was, if I may say, unrecognizable. The resettlement about which I had such doubts was achieved, has been achieved, and the schools and the old Hindu Muslim sensibilities are not gone, but they have figured out a way through the economy and through education to coexist. And in fact, in some cases, they cooperate quite effectively, politically speaking, on local projects. So I would think I could extrapolate from that experience of these Rohingya people going back and finding unfriendly and friendly neighbors, and then having to be very careful about what they said and what they did, but they would gradually reconstruct. If they had access to the land and to their occupation, they could gradually reconstruct what we used to know of Arakan.
Mhm.
I don't know if Ernest thinks that explains his question, but
No,
that's
that's
the
a good
way I.
answer. That's a good answer. Thank you.
Dr. Zaman, do you want to weigh in or? Okay, possibly there is a.
Nicely, going back will also be a big transition, with many problems, many issues. But the transition, to make the transition, the whole issue of reconciliation and peace building, as you say, within the community will be a long way. They have been here 10 years. In fact, they have been here not 10 years, since 78. So it will take
Yeah.
another, 2 decades in order to really develop the fabrics to live together. And there should be a political attempt for doing this and achieving that. That's it. Thank you.
And I'll just add with my fellow editors 2 quick points for Ernest. Return of Rohingyas back to their 3 main principalities in the North Rakhine, Butidong, Ratudong, and Mongdru. So it is, if you think from the logistical perspective, infrastructure perspective, will be very tough because, as we know and reported mostly by Médecins Sans Frontières, they said that over 90% of their villages were burned to ashes. It is simply non-existing now. And but we also have to remember that there are around 200,000 Rohingyas are still living in that whole area as well. So this is why actually, Ernest, just to quickly finish here, is that building of infrastructure, and especially, as Dr. Zaman mentioned, the social fabric of these communities, mostly Mogs, the locally they call, the mainstream population, those who are Buddhist, and the Rohingyas Muslims, because these are the two largest ethnic groups in the Rakhine, anyways. So repairing their relationship will be really tough thing because of the historical grievances of Rohingyas in the hands, and also we have to we don't forget that military junta, they kind of triggered this polarization because they co-opted, Mogs, mainstream population, and used them against Rohingyas in the past years. And finally, I totally forgot to add Dr. Morshed's very interesting comment about religion and use of it. In Myanmar, particularly after 2001, there was a movement, a very conservative, ultra right-wing nationalist movement led by a Buddhist monk. If you Google, you'll find Times magazine actually covered his story. His name is Ashin Viratu. So if you Google, you'll find that Time has titled this monk as the Bin Laden of Asia, and he was so virulent and he was so effective, garnering support from mainstream mogs from not only in Rakhine area throughout the country, that it was really tough to do something against his groups. And this is how it perpetuated, and especially 2012 riot in the northern part of Rakhine was triggered by Mabatha movement. And Mabatha is a Burmese word that means this one nation, one country, one race. So this is how this whole race dynamic played out. In the conclusion part, I will only add that when NLD came into power in 2015 landslide, so there was a step taken by Aung San Suu Kyi banning this group from the political sphere, and he was actually jailed for a couple of months. And now we don't listen much, but according to my research, the grassroots level organization of Mabatha still exists, and it is also led by women in the Rakhine state. So thank you very much. I will stop, and we are already overshooting time. But there's an interesting question from the audience. Our intern Madara Das posed, and if any of you can quickly comment on it, because this is a little different with regards to security and how non-state actors should be treated in terms of or being as regular stakeholder.
Yeah, there is a discussion in the book about this move to talk with the non-state actors. Now, the Arakan army is like behaving like a state within state. If you look at the control territorially, if you look at the authority established in various townships, they are technically, if I may say, legitimate government of Rohingyas. Now, but if you look at the Burmese state, they are not. It is a very fine line and to walk. And there was an attempt, very recently to talk to them and to open a so-called corridor, which was then backfired. But I would not mind, given what I understand, talking to them and using them as a tool to move and to work with them, because they are the one who represent the people, and the government of Bangladesh should work with them, and also at the state level diplomatically work with the military junta or junta. Now, there are many ways that we should try. There is no one single way which can ensure the resolution of the dispute. But this is the right way to start from the grassroots. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, sir. So the audience will wrap up the session today, and thank you for being with us and for over an hour and 15 minutes. And it was a fascinating discussion for many reasons. Of course, the primary focus is the book that is coming up very soon, edited by three of us, and Dr. Zaman and Professor Bob Anderson. They are all eminent scholars in their own areas, and it is worth listening to their insights about the resolution of the conflict. The audience, please tune in with our future webinars day after tomorrow on Sunday, same time, Winnipeg, 9 p.m. Central Daylight Saving Time. We are going to host a very interesting and important collaboration with one of the largest academic consortia in South East Asia. It's called Southeast Asian Network for Human Rights and Peace. So we are going to sign a memorandum of understanding for collaboration. So please join if you are free and you are interested in this area and this topic. And we look forward working with that group very much in the future. And also on the final note, before I conclude, it is our pleasure to work in this project funded by Global Affairs Canada. And our objective is to find an alternative way of conflict resolution and peace. So with these few words, thank you, Dr. Zaman, and thank you, Professor Bob, for your contribution today. And we deeply appreciate your time and your energy, and of course, years of hard work in publishing and making this book a reality. Most of the credit goes to my senior two editors and their wisdom and bringing people together. Thank you. Stay well and stay safe till we meet again, possibly as earliest as on Sunday. Bye-bye.
Good night.